to do a mic check. So I'm very sorry about that. My goodness. Thanks for coming back. So despite the fact that I just got out my phone, I'd like to remind folks not to get out their phones. Please, please put away your phone if you do have it out, and so you can attend fully to our presenters. So I'm delighted to introduce Diego Perez for his work on rugby in the USA. Take it away.
Hello? Good, okay. Like football, but without pads or protection, is the image most Americans have about rugby. But 800 million people worldwide, including myself, can tell you that it's so much more than that. It is more than 15 giants fighting against another group of 15 giants for 80 minutes. Rugby is a fast-paced, high-intensity sport that pushes the limits of strength and condition. It is fueled by passion, and that's why so many people love it. My name is Diego Perez, and today I will be presenting on the impact of rugby in the United States. A sport that has a fan base of close to 1 billion people worldwide, but has seemingly little to no presence in this country, this sparked my curiosity. Why hasn't rugby established itself in the country? Before starting my research, I obviously took into consideration the hold that American football has on the country. It has a strong culture, and it's the most popular sport in the country. But I believe that there is room for another contact sport in the United States. The purpose of my capstone is to spread information about the sport and to share it in the St. Johnsbury community and spread it more to Vermont, because Vermont, out of all the 50 states, is one of the least rugby-involved states. My intention was to create a plan for a rugby club during the spring, but due to track, I won't be able to do it. So I will be presenting my plan. My more tangible goal is to donate around 6 to 8 rugby balls to the field house, so if anyone who's interested in playing or just trying, they have the opportunity to do so. I have many great memories of playing rugby. All the emotions I felt being immersed in that sport are the reason why I chose to do this presentation. Even though I've never had the opportunity to play organized rugby, either here or in Mexico, I played recreationally several times. I have fond memories of playing rugby in the snow with my friends during lunch and practicing my passing in my backyard back home. I enjoy watching my favorite Major League Rugby team and seeing them finally win their first championship this past season. That is my favorite team, the New England Free Jacks. Also, watching this year's World Cup this past fall gave me the opportunity to introduce the game to my dorm mates. The 2023 World Cup held in France broke attendance and viewing records with 1.8 million total people attending the tournament and 1.1 billion people watching it worldwide. The official Instagram account also gained 1.8 new followers, including 400,000 from the United States. Rugby, like other sports, is always evolving and has a rich and international history. Tim Collins wrote in his book, The Overworld, that many versions of rugby have existed before the version we know now. The Greek writer Athenaeus of Naucratis described the Roman game of Phaenindia, which was later altered to Harpastum. Athenaeus wrote, "He seized the ball and passed it with a laugh to one, while the other player he dodged." Archaeologists estimate that the game originated in ancient Rome in the 5th century, but even more than 2,000 years ago, we can see the similarities to the game today. But it is good that we don't play with inflated animal bladders anymore. The game of folk football and campball were also earlier versions of the game. They were played in northern England and Scotland, starting in the 9th and 10th centuries. In northern France, La Sole was played starting in 1147, and a more popular, still present Italian relative of rugby is Calcio Storico Fiorentino, which is a very violent tourist attraction in Florence. The idea of carrying and passing a ball with the goal of scoring points has existed for around 3,000 years, but the birth of the modern game is very controversial. William Webb Ellis, who's a namesake for the World Cup trophy, was a schoolboy at the rugby school in England, shown here. According to the legend, Ellis picked up the ball with his hands during a game of soccer and decided to run with it. During a game of soccer and began running with it, creating rugby as we know it now. I don't believe that story is true, but I believe it serves as a foundation for this legend-filled sport. The spread of the game through the game spread through the UK, mainly in posh schools and universities, but it coincided with the peak of the British Empire. So that helped spread it across the globe, mainly to the US, New Zealand, Australia, and South Africa, which are now some of the best countries in the world, excluding the US. That is a picture of Calcio Storico Fiorentino. It's very many injuries. It's only played once a year because of so many injuries. There have been a couple of players who revolutionized the way we play the game and what it means to be an international star. There can be an argument made that all of the top 3 best players ever have been from New Zealand, but today I will only focus on Jonah Lomu, who I believe is the best player ever. He rose to stardom in the 1995 World Cup and showed what it meant to be a great player. Then Johnny Wilkinson was an amazing kicker and is remembered for his 2005 heroics in the World Cup final. And Brian Habana was one of the fastest players ever, and he famously raced a cheetah in 2007. Now that I've given you some background on the sport, I'm here today to show you why I love it and why I think everyone should try it. Rugby requires players of all shapes and sizes. Let's take, for example, South Africa teammates Faf de Klerk and Eben Etzebeth. Faf is 5'7" and 176 pounds, and Etzebeth is 6'8", 258 pounds. Also, many notable Americans have played rugby. Presidents Bill Clinton and George H.W. Bush played in Oxford and Yale, respectively. Dallas Mavericks owner Mark Cuban is an avid rugby fan. He played rugby for the Indiana University, and he committed to match every dollar donated in the university's rugby endowment, which currently exceeds $2 million. Popular country music singer Luke Combs revealed on the Bobby Bones show that he played rugby for 3 years at Appalachian State University as well. Rugby is growing in the US. Adam Hughes describes in his book, This is Rugby, that before 1975, the only way to play rugby was recreationally or in college. But we've come a long way since then. We now have academies, a professional league, and a national team. In this graph, we can see the growing number of rugby players in the country, and we see that it continues to grow. It starts in 2006 with 510,000 and ends in 2018 with 1.56 million players. The numbers are only growing and growing. According to the Sport and Fitness Industry Association, the number of rugby players doubled from 2008 to 2013 and categorizes it as one of the fastest growing sports in the US. The United States won the hosting bid for the 2031 Men's World Cup and the 2033 Women's Tournament. And USA Rugby Chief Executive Nigel Melville believes that these tournaments will do the same for the sport as the 1994 US-hosted FIFA World Cup did to catapult the sport's popularity in the country. Matthew Futterman, who was part of a Pulitzer-winning team and is a veteran sports writer for the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, said that as the US undoubtedly has the athletes to play rugby, they just have to start doing it when they are young. And I agree with him. The base of a country's success depends on its impact with the youngest generations. Rugby is growing at the youth level, where the governing body of rugby in the country, USA Rugby, is developing the Rookie Rugby Project, a program that focuses on introducing touch rugby to elementary, middle, and high school PE classes. We're seeing great growth thanks to the 2,500 clubs supported by USA Rugby and monetary grants given by the US Rugby Foundation. Children and teenagers are always encouraged to exercise, as we all know. Research done by the College of Public Health at The Ohio State University shows that 57% of all high school concussions are football related. In addition to the known long-term effects of CTE, parents are switching away from football looking for a safer option. According to Rugby Report, there are 446 men's collegiate teams in the USA consisting of approximately 15,000 players. There are also 433 women's teams with 10,400 players. National Collegiate Rugby is a governing body for most collegiate teams and clubs. They hold 5 major national events. The 15s Rugby, which is the standard version of rugby, Rugby Sevens, which is a reduced format of rugby played with 7 players aside, and the All-Star tournaments, all held for both men and women. Major League Rugby is the United States domestic rugby league. It was born thanks to Dean Howe's vision of a professional rugby league in the United States. Dean Howe is a former MLS and NHL executive. He had the idea to professionalize 9 existing amateur rugby clubs. A year prior to their inaugural 2018 season, MLR signed a multi-year broadcasting deal with CBS. It was the first time in American history a new sports league had a national TV deal before the launch. As of now, the league consists of 12 teams, including 1 in Canada. 2031 and 2033. The USA Rugby Foundation won the bid to host the 2031 Men's World Cup and the 2033 Women's World Cup. This will boost the impact of rugby in the United States. I have looked on different websites as to, this is my goal, this is my vision. I have designed a detailed plan to create a rugby club here at school. I have taken into consideration the amount of money that I would need, the possible grants available, and the proper time and permissions needed in order for my plan to work. I've looked on different websites as to how much creating this club would cost, and here's a breakdown of the price. I decided that the best and most affordable option would be to buy everything through Rhino Rugby. They provide MLR with all of their equipment. First, the equipment. The average small club counts with around 20 practice balls, 3 match balls, 2 tackling shields, and 2 kicking tees. The cost of these expenses would be around $575. Then, concerning uniforms, at the beginning, a Hilltoppers t-shirt and some black shorts would work. But if we are looking for a higher-end uniform, Rhino Rugby offers a $99 kit bundle, which includes the jersey, shorts, and socks. We would need 15 of these bundles, summing up to close to $1,500. While the price is steep, there are ways to find the money. The United States Rugby Foundation is known for awarding grants to upcoming rugby clubs across the US. Their average grant awarded is for around $400 to $500, which if it is given to us, would cover a great amount of the total cost of close to $2,000. Then there's the question of getting permission. I would have to speak to our athletic director, and then probably, since it's a contact sport, I would have to speak to someone from the VPA, the Vermont Principal Association. Unfortunately, due to time constraints in sports during the spring, I won't be able to actually create this club, but I will still produce a development plan as the last part of my capstone. I strongly believe that rugby has a place in our society, that it has a place in St. Johnsbury. The upcoming World Cups, the rise of the national team, and the developing infrastructure of the youth game, all of these aspects are contributing greatly to establishing a solid base for this new sport to us. While I might not be able to fully create the school club, I intend on finding a way to donate the rugby balls to the field house. So if anyone has curiosity as to how the game is played, they will be able to try it for themselves. I want everyone to have the opportunity to try out the sport I love so much. I want to thank Mr. Moore from the library for his help with finding sources, and also Mr. Levesque for his guidance through the class. Thank you. I will be taking questions now.
Thank you, Diego. Questions for Diego?
How do you think the culture around rugby, like specifically the difference between a player in rugby and a player in, say, American football, differs around possibly the perspective of such a rough contact sport? Like, how do you think the culture around it differs from all the other sports, specifically with the historical context that you gave in your presentation?
Can you repeat the question?
How do you think the culture of rugby differs from all the other sports?
It is an older culture, maybe, depends on who you ask, but I would say it's more of a brotherhood, because it's more, you depend more on the other players than you do, like, say, football.
Thank you.
In your opinion, what would you say that the country is that has the best rugby culture, and why?
I would say New Zealand, because they have very extensive youth programs, and the national team is just incredible. They're the best in history.
Are there any like clubs or teams in Vermont? Like if I wanted to play rugby?
In Vermont, they have the Burlington Rugby Football Club, which is an adult team, and we have, I believe that's the only one, and they go play against other teams from around New England, and also it's called Vermont Rugby Club, but it's like the UVM team, and they also compete with other Division II teams.
Is there a women's Major League Rugby team in the United States?
Not yet, but the women's national team has been very successful. They won the inaugural Rugby World Cup in 1987, and they reached the final in 1991 as well.
Are there any rugby teams in Mexico?
Mexico has the national team, which is ranked like 180th in the world, something like that. So it has a presence, but not a great one.
Oh, there's one down here.
Yeah. Are there any safety recommendations you have for those playing rugby?
You should have an idea of what position you're going to play, because some positions don't require, but they recommend a helmet, like those who receive more, like most of the impacts. But just play, because you're not playing with pads, you're more conscious about your safety. So.
All right, thanks.
So, so if we were to have a rugby club here at St. Johnsbury Academy, the safety is a major concern. So I'm wondering if you did any research on CTE, the chronic traumatic encephalopathy, that is such a concern in football. And I'm trying to understand how playing without pads and helmets would be safer. So if you could help me with that.
I only found information on youth rugby in England, which I don't think relates as much compared to football in the US, but it was close to, football was 12 concussions per 10,000 practices. I think for rugby in England was around 5, which is a substantial number less. And also, there's the possibility of flag rugby, sorry, and touch rugby, and that's another option.
Is that something that you would like to do, the flag rugby, or would you rather do the contact?
But there aren't many teams who play touch rugby in Vermont or in New Hampshire or in that area.
That's another question.
So as you were saying, you probably won't be here for the opening of the club or anything, but do you think that you want to also have the club delve into different historical contexts of different countries, specifically like the Pacific has their own, like Fiji has their own historical context and rugby stories? I don't know if it's also going to be educational or just rugby.
It could be. Maybe days when it's too cold during the spring, we could have like a history lesson. I don't know. I haven't thought about that.
Okay, I think we're out of time, but thank you so much, Diego. Well done.